Hello, my friends. It is Jessica. This is I Read to Relax, and I am here today with my April reading wrap up. Let's talk about how I read in April. I read 7 books in April, which is not bad. It's more like my goal every month this year has been at least 6 books, so 7's not bad. But I definitely felt like I was struggling a little bit in the month of April. I just sort of lost the reading mojo. If you've already watched my May TBR video, like I tried to swap things out, like different genres, you know, my interest was piqued by like movies that are coming out, things like that. So hopefully, so far May's going a little better, but let's talk about how April was. So the first book that I finished in April was actually an audiobook that I primarily listened to over the month of March and just finished in April. But that's a-okay. We finished it in April, and that was The Gate of the Feral Gods by Matt Dinniman, and that is book 4 in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. So I can't say too much about like plot or anything because it is book 4 in the series, but what I will say is the audiobooks are fantastic. The narration is top tier, and again, Matt Dinniman's writing is such a combination of like heavy serious topics and like levity to sort of balance it out. The narration, Jeff Hayes does voices for every different character, and it's just stellar. And then every book, the like worldview is building. So you start, and Carl's perspective is just, you know, aliens have invaded, we're stuck in this dungeon now, and I have to survive. As the books go on, he's learning more and more about how like their larger universe works and how to manipulate it. Plus you're getting an ever-expanding cast of characters. So I just think this series, again, is fantastic. So really excited to, you know, go on to book 5. But right now I'm alternating audiobook series. So book 5 will probably be in June. The next book that I read was a book that I borrowed from my local library. So I'm going to put the cover here. It was The Skylark's Secret by Fiona Valpy. And this is the, I guess you could say, prequel to The Sky Beneath Us, which I had read earlier this year and really loved. So The Skylark's Secret, again, is a historical fiction book with like a dual timeline. And it is the mother of the main character in The Sky Beneath Us. It's really her story and her figuring out, like, she's come back to her small town in Scotland after trying to make it as like the UK version of like a Broadway star. She wanted to sing on stage, so she was like in musicals, and she had moved to London to do that and came back when she basically strained her vocal cords to the point that she wouldn't be able to sing the same way again, and she'd gotten with child. So now she's come home, she's got a very, very young daughter, and she's ashamed to have to come back home, but then she starts learning more details about her mother's past and sort of how she came to be as she is, the situation that she was living in. So again, it was a multi-generational dual timeline story, and the author captures like the Scottish wilds as beautifully as she did the mountains in Nepal, and that sort of like quaint village thing where people come together to support each other, and just the heart of like families where things might go wrong or secrets might be kept, but like the love still shines through. So I really like this author. I will most likely read something again from her in the future, but I really loved that these were tied to the same like family line. So that was great, getting to read the second book with essentially like a character I was already familiar with. The next one that I finished was a quickie audiobook. I had just rewatched the movie One for the Money, which is based on the first book in Janet Ivanovich's Stephanie Plum series. And it's one of my like comfort movies. It's just fun. And it made me think about the fact that I hadn't read a book from the series in a very long time. And it turns out that I left off on book 22. So I grabbed the audiobook from my library, Tricky 22, and it was like, it's like a 5-hour audiobook or something. So it was a real quickie in between the Brandon Sandersons and Matt Dinnemans and like the big audiobooks I've been doing lately, but it was just so much fun. They are about a woman who inadvertently becomes like a bounty hunter in New Jersey and gets into these wild hijinks and has 2 love interests. And obviously at book 22, like we are far into the series, but there's always, you know, somebody she's trying to find, a mystery she's trying to solve, some romance going on, and they're just fun. I hadn't read one in a very long time, so it was like extra fun because they are just formulaic enough that I wouldn't do them like back to back. But I definitely think I'm going to do another one maybe this summer because it was just so much fun to revisit that world. The next book that I finished was a novella, and this series has been everywhere online, and I was like, the FOMO is killing me. Plus, I just, like I said, was struggling a little bit to find what I was in the mood for this past month. I was just not really feeling any of the books on my TBR. So I went off the TBR and grabbed the first volume in the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower. And this is a story set in London, I think in the late 1800s. And the Emma M. Lyon, her parents had passed. She's going to be inheriting her childhood home when she reaches her majority, but right now her uncle or her cousin has been like holding it for her. And she had been at school, but she finishes school, so she's come back to live at her childhood home for the short period until she reaches her majority. And in this volume finds out that her uncle has been, or her cousin, God, I can't remember if it's her uncle or her cousin. I think it's her cousin, has been misappropriating her money, her fortune, her inheritance. And so she's living right now in like the garret in the house, and trying to figure out what she's gonna do because she has no money. She doesn't want to sell her house, but it's just charming and cozy. They're novellas and they cover like 1 or 2 months, and it's just journal entries. Like she's writing about her day, what happened, what she discovered, who she talked to. I am super excited to read volume 2, so that is on my May TBR because it just feels like a nice, refreshing little snippet between heavier books. The next one that I finished in April was Lost Shift by A.J. Skelly. And this is the one and only so far book in the Wolves of, it's either Arcadia or Acadia Bay. I think the series name is on the bottom of the book cover, but if not, I'll put it like at the bottom here. And this is a spin-off from her Wolves of Red Rock. It's a spin-off from her first Shifter series. So these are YA Shifter books, and they're all romances, but again, because they're YA, they're not like steamy romances. There is, you know, kissing and those kinds of things, but they're not, you know, like it's not like a Nalini Singh Shifter romance, which I love too. But these concentrate more on, again, the emotions, the plot, like there's always some sort of, you know, issue, and then like a found family that's sort of going on as they're finding their mates and figuring out their places in their packs. The main character from this book, the main male character, was in the last book of the last series and is now the hero in this one. And there was a girl that he had sort of helped rescue a few years before, and now they've grown together and they've been great friends. They're both on the verge of, you know, hitting full like adulthood and coming into their place in the pack. He's the beta in his pack and has expectations to, you know, continue in a leadership role and continue to sort of prolong the alpha line through his progeny at some point. And so he's been on the lookout for an alpha or beta mate. And the girl that he thought he was going to be with from the last book obviously didn't work out. And so then he realizes he's starting to be attracted to the main female character from this book. And it turns out that she has some secrets, and now she's coming into some powers and on the run from a very wicked uncle. But this one, these ones always make me cry. They're heartwarming. The pack loyalty is always phenomenal. And so again, returning to AJ Skelly's Shifter books was just like a breath of fresh air towards the end of the month. I loved it. So that was great. Then I read A Far Better Thing by H.G. Perry. And this is the same author as The Scholar and the Last Fairy Door, which I absolutely loved. Absolutely loved. Like a 6-star read for me. This one is very, very good. I really enjoyed, again, the author's writing. I liked the concept. What I had no idea of when I picked this one up is that this is a fantasy retelling of The Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. So I actually never read that growing up in school. We did Great Expectations and Oliver Twist, but not A Tale of Two Cities. So I didn't realize what it was until I was looking at somebody's review after I'd finished it and was like, and then I Googled the plot of A Tale of Two Cities, and it is legitimately, like, it really closely follows a lot of the plot points, and the characters are all there. But what H.G. Perry did was took a twist and imagined what if the two main characters from like the second section of Tale of Two Cities, Sidney Carton and Charles Darnay, what if the reason that they looked so close that Charles Darnay could get freed, he was on trial and they freed him because the person accusing him could not prove that perhaps he hadn't seen Sidney Carton, who was also in the courtroom, because they looked so similar. So what if the reason they looked so similar was because one was a fairy changeling and the other was the original human child. And so one is a literal copy of the other, but like the slightly handsomer, more successful copy. It's a really interesting twist, and I think the author did a really amazing job interweaving like fairy lore and the fantastical elements into that story. But it does also explain why there were moments where I felt like the story just was a little stilted, and it's because the author was trying to stick so closely to the original plot of A Tale of Two Cities. So I really, really liked the writing. I liked the fantasy elements. It wasn't a 5-star for me because I think it leaned a little too closely on the original text, and the pacing was a little stilted because of that. But it's a great sort of like fairy revenge based story. So I'm definitely checking out more from this author because I really like H.G. Perry's writing. So we'll see if one that is perhaps not based on somebody else's work will be, again, more to my taste, like The Scholar in the Last Fairy Door was, because that was excellent. And then the very last book that I finished in the month of April was, I think, my biggest disappointment of the month. And I hate giving really poor reviews, but this was the first time in a very long time that I had actively disliked a book and not just straight up DNF'd it at some point. I decided to push through and finish this one because I had purchased it and because I was so excited to read it, and it was just such a bummer. That's a Great Question, I'd Love to Tell You by Elise Myers. And Elise Myers is a person whose videos I very, very much enjoy on YouTube. She's been on there, like, I think she got big during the pandemic, but she tells stories. She's a great storyteller. She's got some autism and ADHD issues, and so she talks about dealing with those things, like learning to cope. She makes awkward social interactions funny. She's extremely relatable. She's also very creative. She does songwriting, all kinds of things. What I don't think she is a great author without guidance and some better editing. Sadly, she's a really, really excellent oral storyteller. She's got the delivery down. She's got a very comedic style. And you're intrigued and you want to hear what's going to come out of her mouth next. On paper, it becomes a winding ramble that just lacks focus. So this is what I thought it was going to be, was sort of a memoir style collection of short stories. And I guess the book sort of did have a structure in the sense that she broke it into chunks based on where she physically was in the world as she traveled through her life to where she is now. But there's snippets of like, oh, I had this horrible interaction and here's 7 steps you should take so that you don't do that. And god awful poetry. And like I said, a lot of it just felt like I was in an unedited version of somebody's personal headspace, and it did not work for me. I had a very visceral, I am not enjoying this book at all reaction, sadly. So I will be donating this to my library or a little free library or something. But yeah, that was not at all what I'd hoped it would be. So it was a bummer of a way to end the month, but I did really enjoy some of my other reads during the month, and you win some, you lose some. So that is my April reading in a nutshell. So far, May has been a banger. I read 2 books over 4 days, which is great. So we're gonna see if we can keep that momentum going, and I will catch up with you guys at the end of May to let you know how that whole month went. But let me know, if you read Elise Meyer's book and whether or not you enjoyed it, because I have not really seen that many reviews of people who really enjoyed it, so I'm just curious. If you've read Emma and Lion, we can totally fangirl over that. Otherwise, just tell me, like, what was your favorite read in the month of April? Because I'm always looking to add books to my pile. All right, I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.